glad to have you all here. So I'm Melinda Packabush. I'm one of the lead estimators at Story Construction. We have Sean Corey on. He is our virtual design and construction engineer. And then we've got Adam Popish, who is a project manager for us. So one thing we kind of wanted to do was just kind of give you an overview of what we do behind the scenes. You know, a lot of times people look at construction as being more of the physical pieces of being of the building being constructed, the concrete, the people out there hammering nails or welding steel. But we do a lot of stuff, what I would say behind the scenes also. Adam, Sean, and myself, the three of us have construction engineering degrees from Iowa State. So we did go to school, study engineering, and construction as an emphasis. So just to kind of get started a little bit, Story Construction has been around for, well, 86 years now. We are general contractors, construction managers, and design build firm. So what that means is general contractor, to sum it up, on a project, if we are the general contractor, we can actually perform labor on that project. If we are construction managers, such as right now, we're construction managers at Ballard, Baxter, Ames, Gilbert, Bondurant. We do not perform any labor work on that project. We strictly manage the construction of it. We're also a design build firm. Therefore, we do have our own in-house designers. So we have 2 licensed architects, interior designer, and then a CAD technician or a senior designer that actually designs projects for us, exclusively for us, that we actually build. So these are we serve a lot of different, oops, sorry. Well, technical difficulty there, I guess. We do serve a lot of different markets, educational, industrial, agricultural, pretty much the majority of the markets. So some of the construction jobs, what we would term as more maybe behind the scenes jobs, are engineers and architects, estimators, our VDC engineer, which is our virtual design and construction engineers. I gotta move my second. Okay. Project engineers, project managers, superintendents, and laborers. So what we'll be focusing mostly on is estimators, our VDC engineer, our VDC engineer positions, and project managers. So as I mentioned, I'm one of the lead estimators. So what we do in estimating is we're responsible for determining accurate costs of a project. In order to do this, we review all the plans and the specifications. We do accurate quantity takeoffs, and what that means is we determine quantities for concrete, steel, wood, flooring, paint, lights. And then with that, after we get our takeoff done, we determine labor hours and material costs based on historical data. And we do ask subcontractors also to help us out with pricing. So like here's a typical grading plan. So one of the things that I like to do the most is the grading. So this right here is one of Adam's jobs, which is the Gilbert High School. They are doing new softball and baseball fields. So here's an example of what the plan set looks like with all the grading, or all the contours of what the grades will be to build that baseball field. You can see the dashed lines are the existing, the solid lines are the new contours. So we take this data and we put it into a program, which we call Insight, and it produces a model. So this is the model of the existing ground here. And then we model it into the proposed ground. So you can see the actual baseball field here. And what that does is that gives us the amount of dirt work, whether it needs to be moved from one area to the other, or what we need to remove off the site or fill onto the site to actually produce those actual grades that are out there. So then another thing we do, like I mentioned, still with our quantity takeoff, is here's an example of a plan sheet of an elevation of a building. So this is actually Ames High School. So then we take and we determine all the quantities. So on this, we have some concrete or precast concrete panels. We've got some aluminum windows or regular, what you'd see in a normal building. And then probably some metal panel exterior on here. So as you can see here, then what we do is we color it up, so to speak, in our program, which helps us determine the quantities. So that's how we get our quantity takeoff. When we bid a job, then we get quotes from a subcontractor. We just have to make sure they're all equal. So in order to do that, we use tabulation sheets such as this, and just make sure that their scopes of work, what they are bidding to us is like apples to apples. So make sure here that this company, Elder, that we don't have to add anything to their scope to make it equivalent to Hallbrook here. So that's another where we analyze data.
Well, I'll hit. So my educational background, it's fairly similar to Melinda's. I started at Iowa State, just in the engineering college, kind of with the intent of either going down the civil engineering or construction engineering path. And kind of I spent my first year understanding the differences and what that might look like as a career path, and decided on construction engineering, mostly because I wanted to be to have a little bit more of a connection to the field and the actual buildings going in place, where a civil engineer would take on a lot more of a designer role and sit behind a computer screen. As it would turn out, as a VDC engineer, I spend most of my time looking at virtual buildings. I still visit job sites and still have that connection to the jobs. But as a VDC engineer, a lot of what I do is in 3D building models. So most of my job involves coordinating the locations of different building systems. So what that means, any building, you're going to have ductwork for air conditioning. You're going to have sanitary sewer pipes and water pipes for plumbing systems, and you need to figure out how those work in a building and how they can all be installed in a timely manner, in a manner that you can work on them in the future. Sorry, my kids are knocking at the door, but
Dad, we're here.
then just in a manner, just in a manner that's useful and beneficial to the owner in the end. And I've got a few slides on that, so I'll kind of skip to some of the rest of the items. So 3D planning and scheduling, what that would look like is sitting down with our superintendents and project engineers and managers prior to a project starting. And with a building model, I can turn on components of a building. So I might be able to show all of the footings, and with that visual representation, it can be a lot easier to understand how something might need to be built. If you have a huge station that you're working in the bottom, that changes some of the scheduling and planning. It might affect which equipment you're bringing in. So kind of all those things go into planning and scheduling. Another thing I work on is virtual mock-ups and visualizations, and usually that's involving preparing a presentation for an owner So an owner may need to, I mean, they may be able to describe to an architect what they want from their building. And a lot of times architects will create these presentations as well. But for us, I think it's helpful, as we maybe make changes in the drawings, if you walk the owner through a virtual model, they can have a different feeling than they would if they were just looking at lines on a blueprint. So it's just trying to, I mean, everything I do is trying to make it easier for people to see, what the building looks like in a 3D space. So trying to bring that a little closer to reality. One of our major goals with VDC is to allow our subcontractors to do a lot more prefabrication, and so prefabrication, what that allows, it moves a lot of our field workers into a much more of a manufacturing environment. A lot of our mechanical subcontractors will employ people, and those employees, instead of going to a construction site, they go to a warehouse, and they're using lathes and robotic welding machines to manufacture building components. And because of the accuracy of our 3D building models, they're able to manufacture large components of the building. So that might be, you might have a bathroom, that the bathroom gets put together in a warehouse and then picked up, put on a semi, shipped to the job site, and at the job site, then it's just hoisted into place with a crane. So that takes some of those construction jobs and puts them into a much more controlled environment, which allows us a little bit more reliability and safety on the job. It also reduces a lot of waste. Another thing that we, and at Story, we haven't quite implemented this, but laser scanning is kind of a big thing that we're trying to get into. And that is, it's taking a laser scanning unit to a job site and allowing it to capture incredibly accurately what is on site. And we might use that for verifying that structural steel is level, and verify that footings have been poured square, or if we have an existing building that we're doing a lot of work on, you can bring that inside the building, scan what's already in place, and then design teams can take that scan data and they can design any renovations inside of that, the laser scan data. So again, it's just capturing a lot of realistic data and data that you can easily visualize. Some of the other things with VDC and BIM modeling, it's you can use a model to check code compliance. So you can write computer programs into the modeling software that will verify that every countertop in the building is an appropriate ADA height, and that at counter, like a sink, it would automatically check that you've got a radius for wheelchair accessibility within that model. Same thing with restrooms, or another big item is an egress path. So anytime you're in a building, you have to be able to exit that building safely, and you can write programs to basically take a person, put it in your model, and have it walk the egress path that an actual person would have to walk, and it'll generate the model can generate a report if there's anything anywhere that person might run into an obstacle or have to go too far, farther than code would allow them to go to get to the nearest exit. So there's a lot of things that you can program into a model to check for you. And then a lot of that modeling. So as we proceed during construction, we generate a lot of data in the model. And we found that owners like to get that data because that helps them with, it helps them manage their buildings. So we've got a lot of owners that they can import BIM data, and that data is, I mean, it might be which HVAC unit is running in what part of the building, what part of the building it serves, and then that data would include an owner's manual and maintenance procedures, all within kind of one data set that they can use to help maintain their building. So what these two drawings show, this is coordination in a 2D world. So you have a blueprint, and you've got to look. So these images here side by side are both of the same. It's the kitchen area at Ames High, and you can, on one, there's the small lines are kind of plumbing. That's plumbing piping, so you can see where water lines are run in the building. The next drawing, you can see duct work, so you can see where ducts are supposed to run in the building. And the biggest thing that I spend my time on is determining what the path might be. So if you go to the next slide, this just shows, so in a 2D world, we would overlay those drawings so that we can see, with one on top of the other, what that looks like. So the ductwork here is red and the piping is green. In a VDC world, we can actually zoom into that building. And if you go to the next slide now, and that should be able to play that video. So this shows a 3D model, and it should.
I don't see the play button.
If you hit space bar, well.
Yeah, I've had that problem before.
Okay, so either way, in this model, you're able to zoom in and get right into the space where all this piping is. So we can see, we can see in a 3D world what is actually hitting other stuff, and that allows us to plan, to plan for offsets if one contractor has to move something up or down. And this space isn't too particularly cluttered, but there's a lot of corridors that get very cluttered with different building systems. So that's a lot of what I do, is just work with contractors to help them move items in the model so that when we actually go to build it in the field, it can be installed, that we have a plan and a schedule that allows each item to be installed, and avoid rework. So in construction, rework it's the enemy. Anytime you do work and it has to be removed and reinstalled, all the work to remove it and reinstall it, and any materials that you lose in that process, it's all added cost that you can't recover. So if we can do more planning and do more detailed planning with virtual design and construction, that prevents rework. So that's kind of a nutshell what I do. The next slide is, it's what a 3D schedule might look like. So this is Ames High School as well. The dark green, I believe, is just showing work that we have completed. Then the light green was work that was 1 week out. The orange was work that was 2 weeks out, and the blue was work that was 3 weeks out. So this uses a model to show, and this is showing, basically it's showing footings, precast walls, and then a little bit of steel, structural steel. But that visual allows a lot of people to absorb really quickly where work is planned and how it's going to proceed. So those are all the things that I do and create in my job. So it's a lot of time understanding computer programs and CAD programs, but it's certainly helpful to the crews in the field, and that's what makes it fun for me.
So one thing I was kind of thinking as Sean was talking and looking at this, and since we can't get it to play, so right here where this blue pipe runs through this pink, what we would be called a joist. So if that pipe was up a little bit or down a little bit, Sean would be able to determine that, and his program should be able to determine that. And then, so before they get out here and build this, we would already plan on moving this pipe somewhere else, so that the entire run was adjusted prior, so we wouldn't have rework. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yep.
Thanks, Sean. Does anyone have questions for Sean about his particular role within the company?
So, like one thing with Sean, Adam and I all started, we were using strictly paper, drawings just on paper. And so this is something that's kind of new and started in construction, I don't know how many years ago, but just more recent. And so using the models for all this purpose and stuff. So these are just, I would say, a new type of career. Not everybody has a virtual design and construction engineer on staff. So I envision there'll be a lot more in the future. So we'll have Adam talk a little bit about project management. Adam, why don't you kind of give them your, Adam has been with us for 20 years, so maybe he can kind of give us a little background of his role here at Story, what he started and how he got to project manager.
Yes, so educational background. I also have a degree in construction engineering from Iowa State. I got into the engineering field, and specifically construction engineering, because as I was growing up, I spent a lot of time on a farm, did a lot of things with my hands. As I grew older and into high school, I had an older sibling who was looking to go into architecture, and that intrigued me a little bit, but I wanted to do more of the building. So I decided on construction engineering, came to Iowa State, and was right into the program. As Melinda said, I have been at Story Construction for 20 years. Actually, today is my 20th anniversary, so that's kind of cool. Out of college, I was hired as a project engineer. And then I transitioned into a superintendent, and currently I'm a project manager, as Melinda has mentioned. I'll go through though and give a brief understanding first, maybe before I get into project management, what a project engineer does, at least at Story, as well as a superintendent. So an engineer, generally hired out of school as an engineer, definitely at Story Construction. That's what a lot of the college graduates or graduates from construction management program are hired at Story for. An engineer generally assists the field superintendent and a manager. They do a lot of the behind the scenes work, like Melinda said. They deal with schedules. They deal with review of shop drawings and product data, which are tools and information that the crews use to help build the building. At Story, the engineer also leads our construction production 2.0 system, which is a job site scheduling and production system. They coordinate with the subcontractors on site. As a general contractor, we have crews that perform portions of the work, but we don't have crews that do all of the work. So we would have a plumber and a HVAC guy, so heating and cooling, and we would have a concrete flat work guy. So on a daily basis, if the engineer is on site, they coordinate with those folks. They also assist the manager in processing changes. If there are changes to the work, we need to price it and understand the change and then submit that to the owner for approval. The engineers at Story also assist managers in some profit projections, so understanding and managing the budget, as well as pay applications. Every month we submit an application or an invoice for payment. Engineers generally help with that as well. And then if the engineer is on a job site, a lot of times there are layout duties that they assist with, and that's just laying out the actual work that we're going to put in place. Currently, I think Story Construction has, I'm going to say 15 to 20 engineers on staff. They generally help and are partnered with one manager and maybe have two superintendents, maybe. Depends on the number of jobs that the company has in totality, as well as the skills of the engineer. That's, I'll say, a brief rundown of the engineer position. The superintendent position is really an on-site manager, so they are on a job site every single day, ensuring that the work gets done with quality and on time. They also help coordinate with workers on site, our own as well as subcontractors. They handle issues on site when something comes up that is wrong. It's discussed amongst the team. They help find solutions and get those implemented so the work can move forward. They manage our own on-site staff. Like I said, we have field laborers that work on construction. They also set steel, work on doors, some carpentry work. So there's a list of items that we perform work on ourselves. So the superintendent is in charge of managing those guys. And then one other thing that is probably a task of all of these positions is helping to educate the younger people at our company. There are a lot of young workers that come into this industry that don't have much experience or don't know the ropes. So part of all of our jobs are trying to help educate those new people and the younger people that don't have as much education and knowledge of the industry as a whole. Three other positions, actually, two at Story, would be a foreman, a crew leader, and then your construction worker. Generally, I'll say high school education for those three positions, or two-year trade school or something like that for education background to get into those positions. We have superintendents at Story Construction that didn't go to college, didn't go to trade school, but are still in a superintendent role, started out probably as a laborer, crew leader, or foreman, and have just worked their way up. So I don't want to pigeonhole anybody into thinking you have to go to a four-year school because Melinda, Sean, and I did. There are absolutely opportunities at Story and in the construction industry without that education. Moving on now to the manager role, which is what I'm currently in. The manager's, I'll say, sole responsibility is total oversight over a construction project. Depending on the size, it might be multiple projects. So currently I have a construction management job in Gilbert. I have a general contractor job in Des Moines and a design build job in Ames. So currently I'm overseeing 3 jobs as laid out here on this slide. So I help develop and manage the project schedule, and that's in conjunction with the superintendent and the engineer to start with, but ultimately all of the team players that are on our job. I help manage subcontractors, and I'll say that management is probably more behind the scenes, negotiating and writing contracts, as well as purchase orders for materials. If there are issues that come up, generally they get bumped up to my level, and I communicate and coordinate with the subcontractors to get them ironed out. The constructability review is probably something that we do early on in the job. also some pre-construction services. So we work through the drawings with designers and owners to make sure what they're drawing is something that's feasible and easy to build. If there are materials or methods of construction that we can change to make it easier, that then generally makes it less costly. Those are all things that the owner is looking for. And us as builders, we're looking for that too, because the ease of construction and building then becomes easier. Phasing of construction goes hand in hand, I'll say, with the schedule. There are a lot of jobs, specifically a lot of the school jobs that we manage, that you can't always do the construction all at once. Examples are if school is in session, we have work to do outside. We might do that first because it doesn't affect the kids that are in the building. But then the renovation work that's in the building, we generally would wait to do until a summer break or until the new part of the construction's done and they could move into that part of the building, and then we would take over an existing part of the building to do work. So we need to think through not only the schedule, but where people can move and how much room is available and how much room the owner would need in those areas, and make sure that it's, I'll say, transition smoothly and there's no real interruption to the owner. Safety, I would say everybody's duty at a construction company is to maintain a safe environment, specifically our guys that are on site. Every single day, you need to make sure that you're working safely and truthfully that everybody around you is working safely. You know, the construction industry can be dangerous if people aren't paying attention and operating in a safe manner. Manage the project budget. So generally, we will get an estimate handed off to us. Sometimes we do participate in the estimate and in helping the estimating team come up with the budget, but generally it's handed off to us. We need to manage it so that we stay on budget through the project. Changes, like I mentioned before, we will process those, and those generally will get added to the budget. Sometimes they get deducted if we do remove some work. And then ultimately, I think all the positions, the engineer, the superintendent, the manager, as well as those 3 field guys that I told you, the foreman, the crew leader, and even down to the construction worker, there's always some element of problem solving. Something always comes up that either isn't right or needs to be changed, or somebody isn't there or materials aren't there. There's always some element of problem solving in our industry. And the more you can pre-plan and schedule work out, the less problems you generally have to solve, which is what all of us like to do on a job site, is not have problems to take care of, but just put the work in place and get done. So that's my quick spiel on what I do. I would say a lot of the management role is communication, some business around the budget, and then just overall management of teams of people.
Great, thank you, Adam.
You bet.
If maybe all of you could answer this question, what advice would you have to young people who are looking to either get into the field of engineering or interested in the construction trades? What would you tell them to do while they're finishing up their high school careers and exploring future opportunities?
For me, I would say just do explore the opportunities. There are a lot out there, and probably a lot that you don't even imagine, or don't even know that are out there. Talk to people that you know that have those careers. You can do job shadows with them at times too. If you can, just try to figure out what it is and what if you have something that you're passionate about, kind of go, maybe check that out and go in that direction. So.
Thanks, Melinda.
I would say a big thing that I think is helpful to new kids that are coming in would be any type of experience you can get, no matter how big it is, in any type of construction. It could be helping your neighbor's brother who is a house builder, or it could be your dad's business that he does concrete work, or something like that, is trying to get some experience. If that is what you think you want to do, to understand that before you get to the college level, or I'll say post high school education level, whatever that may be. But also, just as you go through your educational career, is to try to stay connected with opportunities like that to experience construction as a whole. I know we hire a lot of engineers, and for the most part, they have some experience, but not a lot. We might hire them as an intern, their sophomore year of school, and they're going to be outside on our job site physically doing work. It really helps them understand how things go together. And then when they are hired somewhere, if it's not at Story, somewhere else, it's going to really help them understand how things go together, how things are built. And you won't have to take that extra time to learn it as you're, I'll say, on the job for your initial experience in learning. I think, like Melinda said, try to communicate with the people around you as much as you can to get an understanding of what does interest you, and go forward that way.
Great. Thanks, Adam.
Yeah, and I mean,
Go ahead, Sean.
okay. I would just say that, I mean, a lot of our job comes down to problem solving, and especially in construction, those problems ultimately end up being field problems. It's some guy that's trying to install something that wasn't designed correctly, or or he doesn't have the materials, or the schedule wasn't very good. And nothing exposes you to those problems like being that guy in the field, working on a crew. So certainly, getting experience in the field, or getting an internship early and often in college that's construction related, is definitely huge.
Great advice, you guys. In the interest of everyone's time, I want to just one last call. If anyone on the call has questions, now is the time to ask them. You can write it in the chat.
Hey, yeah, I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Jericho.
I mean, any of y'all can answer this, but like, what's the most enjoyable part of your working day? Like, what makes you guys wake up in the morning and want to go to work? Like Adam said, this is your 20th. Today is your 20th anniversary of working or whatever. So like, what's so exciting to do this job for 20 years?
I would say the most enjoyable part of my job, and just construction in general, especially a general contractor that builds commercial stuff, is every single job you build is a prototype. So there are no two buildings that are ever the same. Every building has different intricacies, different materials, different systems. Everything is different from job to job to job. When I was an engineer and a superintendent, the joy, especially a superintendent, the joy that I got by going to work and making sure that everything was getting built with quality and on time, was when you got to the end and you had a finished product that you could turn over to a client, and they were elated. I mean, new space for office, because they currently have double the amount of people in their current office. Now they can spread out, and we've provided some space for them for expansion, or something like that. Is just having pride that when you're done, the people that are moving into it are gonna enjoy it, and it's gonna be used for a need that they had. And you as a superintendent and your team of guys provided them with something that they're gonna be able to use moving forward.
All right, thank you. Good answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mine's kind of similar. I've always been on the front side of everything. I've worked in design and then, or what we call now pre-construction. So for me, it's always been being able to help produce a design and a construction piece, a building, whatever it may be, within the owner's budget, and something, yes, that they can enjoy. And I know it's pretty cool too to drive past a building or even some of the roads that I've worked on, and hey, I worked on that. So it's something that you can physically see and you can show people. It's a kind of a good feeling.
Great question, Jericho. Thank you. Any other questions from the group?
I had a question more of just for Sean. Sean, what is what you do called?
So we call it virtual design and construction. A lot of times it's called BIM, which is building information modeling. But it's, I mean, yeah, so VDC engineering, but again, the background, I mean, there's a lot of people that are in my position that have CAD detailing backgrounds. And there's a lot of people that end up doing this from the field too. I worked with some guys from Baker Mechanical, and they took some of their superintendents and said, hey, you really understand how this stuff goes together in the field. We want you to start building it in a model, and then train them to do that. So yeah, virtual design and construction.
So there isn't a specific degree for that necessarily. I know a friend of mine, she is what's called a BIM manager for an architectural firm. It's not the same, but they have similar positions. She's kind of a manager of all of them, but they have a similar position. She has a 2-year CAD technician degree. So not really a specific or career path for it yet, at least. I could see eventually there being one.
Thank you.
Again, thank you all for being on the call. Have a wonderful weekend and take care.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
And thank you all
Thank
for
you.
joining us.
Thank you.